What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple H podcast. Happy Hour Hoops. NBA Finals week is finally here. It's been a long, wild season, but it's here. And something else that's finally here is the three of us back together: Steve, Jake, and myself. It's been a minute, fellas. How we
How long
feeling
has
about
it been? I didn't look back. It's been a long time.
I think it's been
We
like
didn't have a
two
show
series.
last week because we were just talking about this before we got on. All May, we don't even know where the month of May happened. It didn't even happen. How it happened. Yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a long time. We've had like every combination though. We've kept it going. That's the Freebird rule here. Has kept it. We've had a Dunny and Jake episode. We have Dunny and Steve. Me and you have done one, couple Steve. Like we kept it rolling, but
We had Slick. We had Amari on. Like, we kept it going.
Yeah.
Happy Hour Hoops does not die, and neither do the Miami Heat because.
Already?
No, I'm not gonna get into the nasty stuff yet.
Not the nasty stuff.
This episode, it's gonna be all finals matchup. Nuggets Heat. We're gonna preview everything, all the storylines, give our predictions towards the end, and then I will give my final sign off of the Dunny last Celtic minute of the year. We could talk about what happened there,
folks.
Yeah. So prepare for that. Stick around if you want to hear me weep and cry about the Celtics. If you're a sicko and you love that I've lost, or if you're in the same boat.
There's a lot of those people.
Yeah, there is.
And
or if you want to just hear my thoughts and stance on the Celtics as of right now, and where we go from here, tune into that. That will be at the end. Let's get into some news and notes because it feels like we haven't had news in a while because it's just been everything that's happening in front of us. But since we last recorded, whatever combination of us it was, Nick Nurse has been hired as the head coach of the 76ers. What did you guys think of this? Philly got their coach. Doc obviously out, Nick Nurse. And what were your guys' initial thoughts on this?
I don't hate it. I liked Nurse in Toronto. I think this might be kind of the switch Philly will need. It's definitely going to be a different style of basketball than Philly's used to, but it may actually benefit them. And I think one of the things too, I think you said in the notes is Nick Nurse is a player's coach, and there's rumors that Van Vliet might join, which is another guard that'll help Philly. I mean, the biggest thing with Philly is they just come up short in the postseason every single year. They have one of the best players in the world in Joel Embiid. Harden, we'll see what happens with the Harden situation. I'm not even going to begin to try to speculate on what James Harden's going to do this offseason. But, I mean, Philly does still have a promising team, and as long as Embiid's there, this is a team that's going to be competitive. It's going to be a playoff team. Nick Nurse has shown it before that he can, take a team to a deep run in the playoffs. And also, too, I think you look at these Toronto Raptor teams, Nick Nurse has kind of gotten the best out of his guys in Toronto. Toronto Raptors, the biggest thing, people say about them, besides obviously the year they won the finals with Kawhi, they never really had a true superstar. And I love Pascal Siakam, but he's really gotten the most out of all these guys. Pascal has really played well. Anunoby played well. Scotty Barnes, who I know you called, Dunny, but not many people expected Scotty Barnes to come out and have that impact he did his rookie season and then year two. And then you look at a guy like Fred VanVleet, who was undrafted, who was out of Wichita State, who was an undersized guard. Next thing you know, he's putting up 20 a game for the Toronto Raptors. I think you have to credit the coach a little bit for that. I think it's a good fit. I think, for Philly, it's they had to make a move, and I think it's smart for them to go with a guy who has experience, who has won with, a group of guys before, who has playoff runs. And we'll see. Change it up a little bit.
I think he's at this point. You guys know I'm not a big Doc Rivers fan when it gets down to the nitty gritty of it. So I do think it's an improvement. I think Nurse has shown his ability to kind of like uplift a roster that shouldn't be playing as well as it was. Like that team, even with Kawhi, to be in the position it was, was amazing. The success that they've been able to have the last couple years. With a roster that just, if you look at it on paper, you wouldn't think it's as talented as some of these top tier Eastern Conference teams, and they've been able to play with them. This year, it kind of teetered out, but we've heard rumblings that they were looking at changes for the last couple years. We know that Masai kind of wanted to do more of or at least the rumors were that he wanted to do more of a rebuild, a retool, and that the players and probably Nurse didn't really want to do that. And I think that that's what happened here. Nurse goes to a situation where it's the pressure's on immediately, right? Like the pressure is on more than it ever had been in Toronto for him. He could have probably stayed in Toronto for 20 years. They could have been a team that stayed near the top of the Eastern Conference and could have been an infrastructure there, but they clearly had different visions of right now. And this man wants to get back to a championship right now and feels that Philly is the best spot for him. And he gets to play with, or gets to coach Joel Embiid, another superstar player, and maybe a guy that's finally on the level of a Kawhi Leonard, who he had so much success with before. I would say that Pascal, as much as you love him, Steve, probably isn't that guy. Maybe Scotty isn't going to be that guy. Maybe he will be eventually, but Nurse seems to be wanting to accelerate that path. He probably wanted to take bigger swings, make the Raptors better earlier. I think the Raptors kind of want to go in a different direction. It seems like, Pascal's in some trade rumors right now, everything else. So I think that's more what it is than anything else. I think if they were winning and they were in the Eastern Conference semifinals this year, maybe Nick Nurse is there and he's there for the next 10 years. The fit for Philly, the biggest question is the James Harden thing that you mentioned earlier. Who knows how that's going to play out?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. I think on all levels, it's a good fit for the city, for new coach coming in. We kind of heard rumblings that he was losing the grips of the locker room towards the end there, especially with all the rumors of Toronto possibly blowing it up and just trading everybody. So I think it was time for Nick Nurse to get out of there. But I'm with you. I think Joel is a coachable guy. I think Nick Nurse and Embiid will work together. I think a lot of the other guys there are also coachable guys. Maxey hasn't really had an attitude problem. He's been great every year he's been in the league. And, it just comes down to Harden and ultimately what he wants to do and if he's comfortable being coached by a guy like Nick Nurse. Because although we've seen Nick Nurse make players better and people get up for him, it's also a little concerning to me that there was those rumblings that he was losing the locker room in Toronto. Was that, a player attitude thing or just them kind of being sick of being a middling team? Who knows? But yeah, I would say the only question mark there is James Harden. But rumors I'm already seeing today is that Coach Nick Nurse is trying to get Van Fleet to join him in Philly. So maybe that would mean James Harden.
Half the league wants Van Fleet at this point, though. Let's be honest. We've seen that from everywhere.
So that would be an interesting wrinkle. Not sure if that's going to happen, but hey, would that be, part of James Harden out the door, bring in Van Fleet? I mean, a Van Fleet and Embiid would be a nice guard big combo, but obviously I think Philly still needs more. But a huge step in the direction, I think. Once you get rid of Doc Rivers, you need a clean slate. You need a championship coach. That's exactly who they bring in. It's going to be interesting. It's going to make those Boston-Philly matchups even more interesting because Boston fans hate Nick Nurse. What is we had Adrian Griffin too, Bucks' new head coach. I think this kind of slipped under the radar. I thought
wild card.
Yeah. Adrian Griffin, longtime assistant, just becomes the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. He's going to be coaching Giannis Antetokounmpo and the boys now. What did you guys think of this one? Like Steve said, a little more of a wild card, a little more shocking. I think there was rumors for a couple weeks there that Doc just might say, hey, I'm done in Philly. I'm going to go to Milwaukee. Not the case. We heard Monty Williams to Milwaukee as well. Not the case. Adrian Griffin, Bucks' new head coach.
It caught me off guard. I'll say that. I didn't really expect it. But like you said, I mean, this is a guy who's been an assistant. He's been there. I don't really have much to say because I don't really know what he'll do as the head coach. Former player, he's kind of done a little bit of everything. His basketball resume, he's kind of done all over the place, done a little bit of everything. So it's one of those things, too. It almost feels like this is a hire that maybe pleased Giannis, right? When you have a type of generational superstar like that, and maybe he's like, hey, I want this guy to be the coach, which we don't know. I'm just speculating. I think that could be part of the reason, because other than that, it feels like a surprising hire. But it also is so Milwaukee to just kind of keep it in the team, not go out and get one of these big, household popular names. They stick with their guy and they're just going to go with it. And I feel like that almost feels like a move to cater towards the superstar, Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's the only reason I would expect this, move to be made. But other than that, like I said, I was just surprised. I don't have too much. I can't really break down Adrian Griffin as a head coach because we haven't really seen it.
To me, it's just the trend that the biggest thing. We don't know what he's going to be like as a head coach, but it's just the trend of where organization seems to be going with a lot of head coaches. You look like Darvin Ham, other former players that are getting these jobs early and with these varied backgrounds. Like you said, Adrian Griffin is done. He's been around the league. He has a lot of contacts. From what I've heard from other podcasts and other things, he's really well respected, really well liked. Very just a guy and a player's coach, like you're saying. So maybe that's a lot what it speaks to with Giannis. Maybe there's some kind of relationship, or Giannis is just, just willing to take a chance and trustworthy organization. And this is another organization I feel like that wants a guy that they can build with. That's why they held on with Budenholzer even longer than I think, they won the title that saved him, but I feel like even the last couple of years, there were opportunities where they could have got out of it and they stuck on and went with it. I think that's the kind of way they're looking at it long term. Giannis has said he wants to be there long term, so he should be involved in that decision. I hope that he was. We'll see how it plays out. I'm not a big Mike Budenholzer fan when it comes down to it either, so I'm not upset with seeing the change. And again, glad it wasn't a Doc or something like that.
Yeah.
This is like a more inspired kind of hire. It's a risk for sure, but let's see how it works out.
It feels like a Milwaukee move.
For sure.
Yeah. I actually like this because it seems similar to the Ime Udoka situation to me.
Mm-hmm.
A guy who's been around basketball his whole life, paid his dues as an assistant. He was he was an okay college player and then kind of got a chance in the NBA, but he knows the game, right? He was an ex-player. He's an assistant, like I said. He's been around for a while, and I'm sure Giannis gave his stamp of approval because he's a guy who's been around, and I'm sure this guy's coached up Giannis one-on-one many a times, and maybe he likes the advice he was getting from Griffin than he had been from Coach Bud the last couple of years. And it just seems like a guy who's already has his hands on the locker room. The organization must be confident in him from his basketball knowledge to just chemistry within the team, because for being honest, the Bucks team and coaching staff hasn't changed much over the last decade for the most part. I mean, there's been some moving pieces, but I guess I shouldn't say decade, maybe a little less than that. But the Giannis era, I mean, we've had this same grouping of guys with a couple of guys in and out, and then Coach Bud there. So they probably, like you said, Steve, it's a very Milwaukee move, but could end up being the smart move for them. I think a lot of people were shocked when the Celtics picked Ime Udoka, and obviously maybe not the best comparison because it didn't work out great, but that first season, right, the players bought in. He had a new kind of innovative coaching style that worked out very well. So I think if you're a Milwaukee fan, you should be happy about it. Maybe, you're a little worried, like you don't know much about him, like we were saying we don't, but that's not always a bad thing. New can be good, and I think this was a good move by the Bucks. And then last piece of news here.
Look at the smile.
Bob Myers steps down as Warriors president. I feel like talk about rumors that have been being spoken about for a while. This is a long time coming. I wonder why now. I wonder if there's a conversation to be had. I wonder if there's more to be shaken up here, but the Bob Myers era as the Warriors president has stepped down. KD actually posted a few Instagram stories with Bob Myers holding his 2 trophies last night. So obviously a very successful time in Golden State. And now there's going to be a new era.
Yeah, it's might be beginning of the end of the dynasty. Well, we'll see how the roster looks at this year. But Donnie, you were saying this for a while, and I know when you broke the news, you had a little smile on your face there, and I completely understand that. But for a lot of people who didn't like the Warriors as much as some, or didn't really care for how that super team came about, this could be the start of a new look of the Warriors, and I think it kind of trickled down effect from that playoff series against the Lakers, and now I think we may see fallout for the next couple months. But either way, it's end of an era, which is crazy because one of the greatest teams I think we'll ever see in our lifetime, or greatest stretches of it, just one single franchise we'll see.
Couldn't be happier.
Yeah, both of you. I know that.
Good riddance. Rest in piss. See you later. No one's gonna listen to your podcast, buddy.
But Draymond's podcast.
I was gonna say, was that a shot at Draymond?
Ah,
or Bob
No,
Myers,
that's
bro?
Bob. You know Bob Myers had a podcast this year?
I
See?
did
Everyone
not
has a
know.
podcast. Everyone has a podcast.
Yeah, he had it
Get
on
Bob
ESPN,
Myers
you
on
didn't
our
even know.
podcast and try to get the real scoop out of it. I'd rather not. No, but it's.
I don't know.
think-
I don't know if he. Do you think he goes somewhere else though? There's some interesting, there's some interesting spots, I guess, that could. I don't know. Wait, like who knows? There's always an organization willing to look to shake things up, and he's a free agent now. Probably one of the biggest free agents when we're talking about executives in the history of basketball. Like this is like Pat Riley going on the market or something
Yeah.
like that at this point. Like,
I would be surprised if he didn't go somewhere else. I mean, it's not that crazy old of a dude.
Not at all. It's just like
So-
what is he? He's such an interesting guy because he was an agent before. Like his come up into being a GM and the president and everything he did was so different from everybody else that it's like he could just be like, oh, fuck it, that was like kind of fun. I kind of wanted to work in tech with Andre Iguodala
Yeah.
or something. Like I don't know. Like he could literally do I think anything, and I wouldn't be surprised. I would rather see him like trying to rebuild, the Bulls or if he goes to like Charlotte or like I don't know, just somewhere like inspired.
I was
somewhere
thinking
that would be
Charlotte, but I'm
interesting
like,
to see
maymaybe he even wouldn't want to do that.
I don't think
I
anybody
don't
wants.
think, I don't
would
think
touch
anyone
Charlotte.
wants to do
Yeah,
that.
maybe it's
I
too much of a
wouldn't.
mess, Charlotte.
It's just
The biggest thing to me and the most interesting thing is just watching the Warriors unfold for the next year and a half, and then more importantly this summer, because there's so many big decisions, at least one or two huge decisions that need to be made for that front office this summer. And now your president of basketball operations is gone. So
yeah.
we'll see. It's going to be interesting wherever
Like
he
you
goes.
mentioned at the beginning, though, the writing's been on the wall. Like we've heard about
Yeah.
Bob Myers maybe
Yeah.
leaving since I feel like training camp. Like that was the first time it was like a story in the Athletic or something like that. So hopefully, at least for the Warriors' sake, they've known since then, basically, and that this was just formal. I know Mike Dunleavy is rumored to take over. He's been the assistant GM underneath, so not a lot of change. Like it's not like there's going to be some big upheaval, but Steph and Bob Myers were really close.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the Warriors, it's Joe Lacob buying them, drafting Steph, Bob Myers being hired. That's the order of OG Warriors at this point. So that's the relationship you have to think about more than anything else. And I don't think Steph's going anywhere, but he might have more influence now because you got to appease him, right? Like you got to do everything for Steph.
Right.
And who knows? Maybe Bob Myers was the guy that was keeping Draymond around. Maybe new management might listen back to those comments he made at the beginning of the year about if the money isn't there, he's going to test free agency. Could be smell you later, Draymond Green.
The Draymond free agency is going to be so much fun.
That's what I mean. I'm just hoping for the utmost chaos out of this as I possibly can. But if we're talking chaos, let's just get right into the thick of it, fellas. It's the NBA Finals. It's the Denver Nuggets, who have been waiting for what seems like a month to see who their opponent will be. It is finally decided. It is Jimmy Butler and the Zombie Heat, the 8 seed that lost their first play-in game, the 8 seed that took down the Milwaukee Bucks, Boston Celtics, and New York Knicks, the 8 seed that has a bunch of undrafted players on their team that are making a huge difference. Nuggets, Heat. It's the finals matchup. Maybe not the best for ratings, but it should still be pretty interesting. These teams have some bad blood. It's the Nuggets first. Let's talk Nuggets first. I just hyped up the Heat there. And we're going to have to talk about the Heat more, which is going to kill me. But first chance at an NBA championship for the Denver Nuggets. Like I just said, they're waiting so long for the Miami Heat. They're waiting so long for that opponent. My first question for you guys, and they have home court advantage in this series. Rest or rust for the Nuggets when we see them in these first couple of games?
Rest. I think it's rest. I think this team has been too well coached all year long. And if you watch the playoffs too, the biggest thing where I see with the Denver Nuggets that has been different in previous years, the second half adjustments, the way their defense, what did we talk about before the playoffs? Like, oh, their defense is going to let them down. They're not going to play even. They were one of the best defensive teams in the playoffs. Their second half adjustments have been incredible. And if there's one team, I think, in the entire NBA that could probably just stay focused for about a week off and then just get ready for an NBA Finals, I think it's the Denver Nuggets. I really do. Just the way the team is built, the way that the players have kind of acted after they swept the Lakers, where they know the job's not done. Their coach, Michael Malone, has just gotten them focused, ready, focusing on this NBA Finals. And this is a huge one, too, for Nikola Jokic, who is already one of the best players in the NBA, if not the best player, but he has a chance to be one of the best big men in history if he could keep up the career he's going with. And what do we say all the time after someone's career? They always look at playoff success, and they always look at how many rings you got. And this is a golden opportunity for Nikola Jokic to get his first ring. He's someone who's also super focused. He does not really have many off-court distractions, if any. I don't think they're going to come out and be rusty. Yeah, exactly. He just goes home and rides horses. A little innocent guy just riding horses. Now, poor horses dragging him around, but I mean, Jokic, like
big boy,
this is someone who's going to be focused on basketball. I don't think a week off, and maybe if it was, different scenarios or different teams, I'd be in a completely different situation. But with the Denver Nuggets, I really do think they're going to come out and be focused. And we've seen it too. Every single series. Game one, this team is ready. This team is ready to go. I think we're going to see more of the same in the first game of the NBA Finals.
I'm with you. I'm with more of the rest side, but there's a couple of reasons. It's more contextual than anything else, because I do think that I do think sometimes teams sit at home and they get rest on their laurels and they come out a little lackadaisical. Mm-hmm. The first thing, just the fact that the altitude is real, and Miami, a team that is not even out west. They're coming literally from below sea level to altitude. It's a crazy, like Boston and Miami, where they've been the last 2 weeks, some of the lowest sea levels in the it may sound crazy, but going from 0 to 5,200 feet in 2 days after game 7. And that's another thing is that rest versus rust. Yes, the Nuggets might be a little rusty, but the Heat just went through a war. Like the Heat went through a war. They played Sunday night, or they played Monday night, and then flew immediately to Denver, and they're preparing for this game. So I just think that they're going to be exhausted no matter what, and adjusting and everything else. And the biggest thing it comes down to is I don't know if this Nuggets team can get rusty. I don't know if I've seen a team like, now that Murray and Porter are healthy, and just the fact that they are healthy and have finally settled back into their roles where they're supposed to be, and the team that they've built around it all year, like this is where they've been all year, and it has not wavered. And even if the Celtics had won that the other night, I think I'd be just as definitive in thinking about how Denver was going to come out, just because they've looked down. Even that Lakers series, like everybody's going to talk shit about the Lakers getting swept. Everybody's going to make fun of the Suns for losing. And the Suns getting 2 games off Denver is kind of amazing at this point. The Lakers were playing good basketball in those games, going hard. Like the Nuggets down 15 in that I don't know if we've all talked about that game. That game 4, one of my favorite games of this entire playoffs is that game 4 in a sweep, in a game that was like, would not have really mattered even if the Lakers somehow pulled it out. But the Lakers were playing at such a high level, and the Nuggets were just like, let's just turn it up like a gear and a half, and then we'll be able to figure this out. And that's what Michael Porter said. I was listening to him earlier on JJ Redick, and he literally said, like, we were locked in, but they came out. Bron was playing amazing. We're down 15. We went in at halftime. We're like, let's tighten up. We want to close this out. And what did they do? They were up by 2 with like a minute left of the third quarter. It was crazy. And then you know who else could do that before? We were just talking about them. The Warriors. It's the only team I've seen in the last 7 years that can just automatically turn, like the faucet turns on offense, and it's a flood. And it's because of Jokic and everything that he does, whether it's scoring or just making every single right decision on the court. So Russ doesn't matter. I don't think it matters. I think that they're just so well oiled that there's no pun intended there. That it's not going to matter for anything for them, especially in this scenario.
Yeah, I'm with you guys, man. I can't really see a world where it's rust, and like maybe if they had a more, and you know, I don't want to take anything away from the NBA Heat, because I'm with you, Jake. I don't know how confident I would have been if the Celtics made it to this point, because they had to go through the same dogfight that the Miami Heat went through and play this 7-game series, all while the best team in the NBA all year, for the most part, has been waiting for them on the other side. So I don't think that, you know, the Denver Nuggets fear the Miami Heat. I don't think there's a player on their team that they individually fear. And I don't think there's going to be really any surprises from them. They're going to do their thing that they've been doing the last 2 series. Michael Malone was actually on Part of My Take the other day, and he kind of talked. He answered the rest versus rust question and said, you know, we're doing all the right things. We have certain days for this and certain days that and this was before the series was decided. So he was saying, you know, we're giving looks as if we're playing the Celtics. We're giving looks as if we're playing the Heat. You know, we talk about how good the Denver Nuggets have been all year, and Murray stepping up, Michael Porter Jr. stepping up. You know, credit to Michael Malone too for just keeping this group in sync all year long, not getting too high, not getting too low. They're doing everything right. And yeah, I can't really see a world where this is rust for the Denver Nuggets, and especially with the first 2 games at home in this. But yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. I guess I'll ask a question about the Miami Heat now. I think this is a big one and something that infuriated me throughout the Celtics series. But can the undrafted Heat players do it for one more series? Can these guys who aren't Bam, who aren't Jimmy, continue to help the way they've been helping? And can they do it against the Denver Nuggets, who have, in my opinion, probably after watching the Celtics throughout the playoffs, I can definitively say the Denver Nuggets have the deepest team in the NBA now.
Yeah.
Can they do it?
First off, where did Caleb Martin come from? I've never seen someone
from J. Cole. What do you mean?
Dominant,
J. Cole always
a dominant Eastern Conference sponsor. It doesn't matter, any series, after being such a just, you know, average role player the entire year. I mean, that's incredible. And also too, Dunny, I know, can they get it done is one question. They may only have to get it done for a couple games, because Mr. 20 a game, Mr. Tyler Hero, might be ready to go by game 3, ramping up the basketball activities.
Hold on,
he might be ready to go. What you got?
I think they're better without Tyler Hero on.
I'm not gonna go off and say that.
They were the 1 seed last year when he was on the bench all year. They made him the starter this year. We're the 8 seed. He gets hurt, and they go on one of the greatest runs in NBA playoff history.
I think there's a lot of other different factors there, though, and I also think too,
that is one big factor. That is,
but I'm saying I'm not saying
not him in the lineup, but he can't start. He can't start at all this playoff series, and they need to look at that seriously again in the offseason, because how does a Caleb Martin, like you're saying, no one ever would have fucking thought this was possible.
Well, I think if Hero starts, he'd probably replace Strus. He'd probably replace Strus in the starting lineup. I think Martin and Gabe Vincent have locked themselves in starting roles for the
Martin locked him into like $20 million a year next year. That's
Kevin Love was starting, and then they realized Caleb Martin's 9 million% better coming off the bench. Let's see what he can do with 35 minutes a night, and it's been unbelievable. But I think if Hero does come back, now I don't know if he'll be 100%, but if it gets to the back and they're like Hero starting, he's going to replace someone. I think Max Strus is the odd man out. I think Max Strus comes off the bench. Caleb Martin and Gabe Vincent give you too much both offensively and defensively, and they've both been absolutely dominant in these playoffs. I know Dunny hates me saying that, but it's true. And the biggest thing, and this was kind of the only concern I really had going into the Celtics Heat series, and it came true, is that the Heat just want it more on the offensive glass. They just want it more on those loose balls. They just want it more. And if there's one team that can play with physicality that could make Denver a little uncomfortable despite being undersized, it's the Miami Heat, man. The Miami Heat are just always going to be a better playoff team than a regular season team because of just their physicality, because of their willingness, not just Jimmy Butler, but the entire rest of the team. And we kind of saw that. And the big thing, too, we kind of saw a little bit in the Eastern Conference Finals. Bam finally woke up. Bam finally realized he was in a playoff series. And it's just, when you look at this team like that, the Heat have that next man up mentality, that Heat culture that everyone doesn't want to talk about, but it's true, and it's a factor that matters. So my thing is, it does not matter if Tyler Hero starts, does not matter if Tyler Hero comes off the bench. If he plays, it's going to be a big addition to help them. It's going to help the rotation make an impact. But as we've clearly seen, they don't need it. And I'm not saying I love Tyler Hero. I think Tyler Hero is going to help them if he does come back in Game 3. But Dunny's right. I mean, you look at these guys that were just role players that no one really knew of, and now they just have big roles. It's because of this next man up mentality, and they just play 120%. Will they be gassed if this series goes 6 or 7 games because they just had a war against Boston? Maybe. But I told my friends this morning. I go, I'm tired of betting against Jimmy Butler and this Miami Heat team. Because every time you think you've got them or you're ahead, they just come back. And they've been doing this. It doesn't matter if they're down 20. It doesn't matter if they're up 15. It doesn't matter if they lost 3 games in a row. It doesn't matter who they're playing. This Miami Heat team does not quit until that final whistle, until the clock is 0. And it does not matter who's on the court, who's getting it. The only one, really, Jimmy Butler's kind of their go-to guy, obviously, in the playoffs. But other than that, Strus can have a big game. Vincent can have a big game. Martin can have a big game. Bam can have a big game. And the best thing is they recognize that as a team. They're like, this guy's hot today. He's getting 15 shots up tonight. This guy's not playing well. He'll be more of like a role player involved. And that's the thing, too. When Bam wasn't shooting well, he has 6-7 assists. Besides Jokic, obviously, who's just he's the exception to the rule. When else do you have a big man who's like 2 of 8 from the floor and still involved offensively by facilitating, by getting other guys involved? I'm tired of betting against the Heat. They keep proving me wrong every time, and it does not matter. It doesn't matter what name's on the back of the jersey. They're going to step up and they're going to play well. That's how it is.
Something that might matter that I got to ask you guys is the size matchup. I think it could be a force for the Nuggets all series long. It could even be the deciding factor. We saw in Game 7, Bam started to get in a little foul trouble against the Boston Celtics, although it didn't end up really being an advantage for the Celtics because they couldn't do anything in that game anyway. The Nuggets have much more size all across their lineup, on their bench. And after Bam, the Heat have 0 size. Yeah. At least physically imposing size. They have guys like Haslam and Kevin Love, but we both know those guys haven't been physically imposing in years in the NBA. What do you guys make of this size matchup? I think Aaron Gordon is going to be a huge, huge piece in this series and could disrupt a lot of things for the Miami Heat.
Love's gonna have to get dusted off for sure because they're not gonna be able to play small that whole time. If you look at Jokic dominated both games against the Heat this year. The Heat couldn't do anything with Jokic, so I think what the Heat the Heat might not play big because they might just be like, all right, Nikola, you can have 50 every night. Like have 55 points, go 20 for 25 from the field, and the Heat strategy, at least what I think they're going to start off with, is letting Nikola do whatever because they know they can't do anything with him. They've seen it twice this year. I'm sure it's whatever defense they threw at him earlier in the year is much more vanilla than whatever game plan they're going to have this year. But that's just what I think they'll initially do. Let him do whatever and see if Porter and Murray with whatever kind of nonsense zone double teaming in the corner, whatever they're going to try to do to those guys to try to just mess with them. I'm interested more in to see that. I think Nikola is going to be able to score and just do whatever he really wants to do, because the Heat really haven't shown a way to stop that. So I'm like, why try to double down and try to stop it? Let him do that and guard excellent at the perimeter, take away their shooting, and try to see how that works. That's what I think the strategy might be.
You mentioned zone, and when they played a zone against Boston, it was very effective. And I know when you play a zone in the NBA, you're kind of banking on guys missing threes that are half contested, half not. But it worked against Boston. And Boston's a great team that can play small ball, kick it around the arc, and take open shots. So you talk about that. You also have the Heat with, in my opinion, probably the best coach in the NBA right now, in Eric Spoelstra, where they are going to adjust to games on the fly. They're going to see what the Nuggets want to do. And you're right, Jake. I think they'll let Jokic do whatever he wants, because sometimes you're like, we're going up against one of the best players in the world. There's no stopping him. Jokic is averaging 30 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists these playoffs. His shooting splits are ridiculous, and he went up against guys like Anthony Davis. He went up against Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Like, these are guys who are big and supposed to be defensive centers. And now Bam Adebayo, who's a little smaller than those guys, but still supposed to be a very good defensive center, doesn't matter. You're not stopping Jokic. So I think we could see a little bit more zone from the Heat. I think we also could see the Heat, maybe play a little small, maybe try to run more, even though the Nuggets love running as much as anyone right now, especially in these playoffs. But say, hey, we'll run with you. We'll shoot up. We'll shoot a bunch of threes. We'll try to turn this into a track meet. But I think it's going to be tough because they don't have an answer for Jokic. And after Bam, I think who's their next tallest guy? Jimmy Butler at 6'7", who plays regular minutes, not besides Kevin Love. And then what? You have Martin at 6'5". I mean, this is a small team. But I'm going to say this, and I know Dunny's going to hate me for saying this. It doesn't matter how small they are. They play big, and they play bigger than Boston. They did. Mm-hmm. And they played bigger than Boston. And that's the one thing with the Heat that they've done pretty much all these playoff series. Milwaukee had all the size in the world on them. They played bigger than Milwaukee. They wanted it more. They were more physical. I think the Nuggets is the hardest test yet. But if there's any team where they can just kind of throw size out the window and they can adjust, you need a good coach and you need guys that want it and want to play physical. And that's the definition of the Miami Heat.
Yeah. I agree with that, honestly. That, I was thinking size is going to be a huge issue for the Miami Heat, but it's a good point, Steve. I mean, they've just found ways to make it work, even when Bam was in foul trouble, even if their team was a whole hell of a lot bigger than them that they were going up against. And then, a big part of that is obviously just Eric Spoelstra being the best coach in the NBA, in my opinion, and having these guys ready. And if they aren't ready to start the game, he calls a timeout and puts them in a set or a certain zone that makes them ready and makes them prepared. And then, you have guys up and down your roster. Like, as much as I dislike Kyle Lowry, he plays super hard. He hits the glass when they need him to. Max Strus, a not very athletic guy, he hits the glass when they need him to. Caleb Martin, an unlikely hero, he comes up and makes big plays all over the floor for 7 games versus Boston. And is a huge reason they won that series. So, although kind of out star powered and out, they lose the size battle too. It still just might not matter because the Miami Heat, we've been saying it all playoffs, the zombie Heat, they just don't die. It'll be super interesting. My favorite part about this, honestly, and it's tough to see it go this way when the Celtics lose to them, but Jimmy Butler being on the revenge tour of all revenge tours is just amazing. I think 99% of NBA fans would love to see Jimmy Butler get a ring. And that's something that's going to keep me watching, is just being able to watch on a night-to-night basis who wants it more, Jokic and Jimmy Butler, because two guys who I think are just super deserving of rings. Butler been fighting for it a little bit longer than Jokic has, but, they both made pretty solid pushes in their respective conferences, and now they're both here and they get a face off, and which should be a pretty heated and interesting finals matchup, if you ask me.
And also, too, I mean, I know it's kind of different rosters now, but we forget with the Jokic, the push on Morris, and then a little beef right there. I'm telling you, the first time this gets physical, and I promise you this series will get physical, these are two teams that are not going to back down. Neither of them. And that's kind of what I love about both these teams. That's what I love about both their superstars. Jimmy Butler and Jokic, yeah, they're fan favorites. Yeah, people, they're super nice, fun guys. On the court, you're the enemy. And you're not pushing them around. You're not talking shit to them. I think it's going to be a great series. And I'm really excited to kind of watch how this series unwinds because both of those guys are super emotional players where if they need to step up, they will. And they're not going to take shit from anyone. I can't wait for it.
Maybe that's the idea for Miami. Because they're just going to try to beat the shit out of Jokic in the first quarter. Just try to get him into a fight. Just that's where you throw Haslam out there. If Haslam's out there in the first quarter, they better get Jokic off the court.
Throw bows left and right.
Just go beat. Literally, just clothesline him. Who cares? Start a melee. What do you got to lose? That's what UD needs to go. He needs to go out on his sword and just take Jokic out and then retire like the next day.
He would be a Heat legend forever. His number would be retired. He'd be a Heat legend forever.
What do you guys think the odds are that Udonis Haslam touches the court in this series?
High.
I guess honestly, yeah, that's true because I feel like if there's an elimination game where the Heat are up and they're in a position to send the Nuggets home, Spo's going to send them in the game. And
I think vice versa too. If they're in Miami and the Nuggets are up, big, and this could potentially be like the last, playoff game in Miami for Udonis Haslam, he's touching the court for 20 seconds.
Yeah. I can't wait for Udonis Haslam, like Heat timeout, down 20 at home. They put Haslam in. He's trying to coach up the guys like it's a 5-point game.
He's like backing his guy down in the paint, calling for the ball.
Throw him an alley-oop. He falls out of bounds again. Oh, man. I need the Haslam minutes now. I didn't even think about that. That would be a possibility because he's just had his hoodie on all of last series. But that would be something special if we got – especially if it's what Jake's saying. If they just put Haslam for another body on Jokic, like that would be comedy.
What kind of chicanery does Kyle Lowry get into, too? Kyle Lowry and Bruce Brown against each other in the finals. That's going to be – there's going to be something. Those two.
Also, too, KCP. KCP's been playing like a dog, and the rookie Christian Brown. Christian Brown is another one who's going to play physical. He's one of those guys that, like, you don't really realize how much you hate Christian Brown until you're up against him. And I promise you, it doesn't matter if he's only playing 10 minutes a night. Heat fans are can't stand when he.
That's how I feel. Dunny feels about that Highsmith guy. I can't even remember his first name. But anytime he comes on the floor, I'm like, I know this dude is about to get like 3 rebounds he shouldn't have, and like deflect some ball out of nowhere. Like all playoffs, they'll throw him in for like 20 seconds and again, you're like, why is he not playing the whole time? And then he shoots the ball, and you're like, oh, that's why he doesn't play a lot. Yeah. But that guy, like, Brown, he's a motherfucker. That guy's gonna make a lot of money in the league just being annoying.
Jeff Green, he's still got a little fight left in him too. Oh, he had some battle with Miami's over the years when he was with Boston. We'll see, man. I think this series might be a little more fun than people are willing to give credit for. I think
people are cheering for. I can't like. What was the way somebody put it the other day? Cheering for laundry for this playoffs. Like, this is a very exciting basketball. Like, this is a very exciting final series. There could have been boring final series.
Yeah,
out of the scenario of just at the start of the playoffs. This was not one of them. No one expected Miami to be here. The fact that they are here, I don't understand how people are.
The 8th seed.
Did you see
they had to get through Milwaukee and Boston?
Did you see the people discounting already the Nuggets playoff run? They're like 4 seed Suns, 7 seed play-in Lakers, 8 seed play-in Heat. It's like if you make it through 3 rounds of the playoffs, Like, how have we not
You
learned this at this
swept
point?
LeBron. It's a good playoff run. You swept LeBron and you took KD and Devin Booker's Phoenix Suns team out.
Weakest finals run ever. Yeah, no.
Could you imagine that though? Could you imagine that? Like you just talking to some casual fan and you go, "Hey man, this team beat Kevin Durant and then LeBron in back-to-back playoff series. Weak run." They look at you like you're out of your mind.
Imagine if you're the Denver Nuggets fan who's literally never been to the NBA Finals in their life before. They don't give a fuck who they beat to get there or who beat who to get.
But it's not even a weak run. You took out KD and LeBron. Very few teams can say that.
James.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about? And that's going to be Jimmy Butler.
And I will say, not to the same degree, because I do think the Nuggets' path was more difficult. But I was thinking about this before the Celtics had been eliminated, because I knew even if the Celtics had made it here, all the haters would have been saying, "Oh, it's one of the easiest paths in NBA history to the finals." And I think that's a discredit to the Heat, and it even would have been to the Celtics, because if you think about it, the Heat took out the number one, the best team in the NBA all year long, the Milwaukee Bucks. They had to go up against the New York Knicks, which
dominated the Knicks.
It's never easy.
Yeah,
they were
never easy to win in New York. Physical team, and they dominated them, as Jake said. And then they had to win a Game 7 in Boston against Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who everyone kind of after that Game 6 had given up on the Heat and thought they were done. They win by double digits easily. And I think if it was the flip side, Boston had to take out Embiid and James Harden. You know, obviously Trae Young not shouldn't have been as much of a challenge as it was. But then you have to go up against the guy at the best coach in the NBA, and then the team that took out the number one seed. So
also the team that you beat, no one seems to, this point has not been mentioned nearly enough. The fact that the Heat, like that mentioned by the Heat, they were there last year. This is who they lost to last year.
Throw the seeds out the door.
It's the revenge season. That's the biggest thing in sport, all of sports. They literally got like the ultimate revenge over the team that Jimmy has seen that shot last year in Miami in his dreams every single night. Every single night. You don't think that was in there? Like, I don't know. I just don't understand how you can't appreciate that.
And that's when I hate so much when people go off seeding so much in the playoffs. Throw the seeds out the door once you get to the playoffs. It doesn't matter. It's about the teams. That's what I'm saying. And the Miami Heat, not just this year, this Miami Heat group, has been one of the best teams in the East for the past 5
now
seasons.
They've made 2 finals in 4 years.
Yeah.
2 finals in 4 years. But the fact that how can you talk about the Eastern Conference all year and be like, oh my gosh, it's the most loaded Eastern Conference ever, 1 through 8, so good. I can't believe these teams are going to be playing teams. How are they going to be playing teams? And then be like, oh, the 8 seed made the finals, weak conference. What the fuck are we talking about here? And they won 44 games. It's not like they're like 37 and 43.
And they were banged up all year too.
It started slow, and we knew even when they were like the 13th seed in the East, we're like, here come the Heat. And sure enough, here come the Heat. And what did we see? What did everyone say for a month leading up to the playoffs? This is the team you don't want to face in the first round. Why? Because they can make a run like this. Because they can make a run like this. They took out them taking out Milwaukee in 5, and I know Giannis missed 2 games. I know he was banged up. He still put up stupid numbers when he played. But them taking out Milwaukee in 5 should have been an eye-opening, like, oh, this team's legit. Then, and this is no offense to the Cavs, Jake, but the Cavs got bullied by the Knicks, and the Heat bullied that team that bullied the Cavs.
The Cavs made Heat, dude. Oh my God, they would have got 40 points every game.
It would have been 40 points every game. The Heat bullied a team and I think everyone remembers this. I know it feels like 2 years ago at this point, but when the Knicks beat the Cavs in that playoff series, everyone's like, oh, wow, the Knicks might have figured it out. They look good. This is a team you don't want to mess with. And then the Heat just bullied them. And then they go up against the Celtics, who I think has also been one of the best teams in the past 4 or 5 years. They've made run after run after run, and it was an absolute war. And not only that, but what you talked about, you know how easy it is to give up after blowing a 3-0 lead, to just, you're going back to Boston. You know what your type of environment you're going into. And they did the opposite. They did the absolute opposite. That comes to coaching. That comes to the core of the team. That just comes to mentality overall. This team, that's why I hate when people are like, oh, they're an 8 seed. They're not playing like an 8 seed, clearly.
Yeah.
So just throw out the seeds and just appreciate how good this team has been, how good Jimmy Butler has been when he has to turn it up for the playoffs, and how good of a coach Eric Spoelstra is, where it's just this next man up, heat culture mentality, and they're in the NBA Finals again. It just, and everyone too who was like, oh, it's a bubble, it's a Mickey Mouse NBA. Well, the same 4 teams were in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. So what are you saying about that now? They're a damn good team, and they have been for 4 or 5 years.
Yep. And you could say 3 of them have been built strongly for 3 years, and the other 2 just had LeBron James and Anthony Davis and figured it out.
Yeah, like and that's just a couple other guys.
Just
yeah. Sometimes it is enough having LeBron and AD.
But it's like the only comment I have about, you mentioned the Cavs, and the only thing that I think about Cavs related when it comes to this playoff series is whatever they want to pay Karis LeVert, can we just give that to Caleb Martin? Because that's exactly the kind of player that the Cavaliers would have needed. And it's crazy. Caleb Martin, I can't give that guy
Caleb
flowers.
A free agent after this year?
Yeah, he's on like a $6 million deal right
now. Dude is gonna get paid.
You want to talk about maximizing your earning potential in a big spot? This man has done. I can't give him enough flowers. Like Vincent is a great shot maker. Strus plays his role really well, but Caleb Martin, that dude can do everything. Like in the effort,
he's different
defensively too. Like
he almost won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Do you know
he
how good you have to be?
He really
almost win that. He probably should have, but Jimmy gets it because of what Jimmy just does all playoffs.
Yeah.
But you know how good you have to be to take it over like a superstar.
Over Jimmy and Bam, bro. Like, obviously, Bam didn't play a great series, but, I mean, what do we, like, obviously, anyone, you put those 2 players in front of you, Bam's a better player.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because we talked about how bad the Charlotte Hornets are, that Bob Myers might not want to go be the president there. They were the ones who released Caleb Martin.
Yep. Like I said, thank Cole. J. Cole apparently
completely forgot about that.
Working out with him in Charlotte, and I don't know who fucking J. Cole knows with the Miami Heat, but he's like, hey, get this man in here, and now here we are.
There we are.
All right, finals predictions, folks. What do we got? Who and how many games?
So I don't die at work or have to, deal with a depressed meerkat for at least 3 months until football season. I'm going to take the Nuggets, but I'm going 7. I don't think this is an easy series either way. I think Jokic gets it, and I think Jokic, once he finally gets it, it's so stupid, but once he gets a ring, people will all start to realize how good this guy is. Not just right now, but like he could be a historically good big man. I know if you're, watching basketball every night, you see it, but it's at least nice that people are appreciating how good Jokic is. Eye-opening. Give me Nuggets in 7. I think it's a war either way, though. I wouldn't be surprised if either team won this, but I would be more surprised if this series ends in 4 or 5 games than if either team wins. If that makes sense, in 6 or 7. I think a short series would shock me.
On paper, I would really still just want to say Nuggets in 5, but I can't do that to the Heat anymore. So I'm just tacking a game on there and going Nuggets in 6. I think that the Heat can drag another game out of there. I think Nuggets are just a level ahead of them at this point. And Jokic is too much. It's just going to be too much. And it'll be fun to see some sad Miami fans before football season starts. So winning it in game 6 would be nice.
I hate to be boring. I'm with you, Jake. I think it's Nugs in 6. I think when I first thought about this series, I was like, oh, Nuggets in 4 or 5. No, not after what I just saw. The fight that they were able to put up, the ability of the Miami Heat to win on the road, them having guys who just stand up and get up for Heat culture and just perform. I do think the Nuggets handle business. I think home court advantage will be big for them, especially a team that has had to fight tooth and nail to get to this point. The Nuggets have been waiting. They have the altitude on their side. I think that could affect some of these undrafted guys who have been kind of playing out of their minds a little bit. It might help them come back down to earth. I see Jokic hosting the trophy. I think Jamal Murray is finally healthy. He was incredible last round, and I think it's going to be Nuggets here. But like I said, man, it would sting a little bit if I had to see Miami win it all. But I would be nothing but happy for Jimmy Butler, man. He's a guy who, for a long time, I was just a fan of the teams he was on because of the way he played. And for a long time, I wanted him to be a Boston Celtic during different free agency points. So, I would be super happy to see Jimmy get a ring, but I do think it's going to be Denver, and I think it's going to be Jokic getting this first. So we're all on the Nuggets.
So
hopefully,
Heat in 5.
So Heater winning this. I say it every time. I kind of stopped out in the Miami Heat, man.
Oh boy, that is probably how it's gonna go. You guys cool if I do my send off Celtics minute here?
I think it's only right. First
All
off,
right.
before you start, Tony, I just want to say rest in peace, Stevie Boston. It was a fun 2-month run. You'll be missed. Maybe we'll see you next year.
Yeah, sorry we couldn't get it done for Steve.
The floor is yours, Tony.
First and foremost. But here it is, guys. My recap of the Celtics season as a whole, and I'll hone more in on the playoffs. But I want to start by saying I've been very lucky since Tatum and Brown have come into the league to watch this squad and perform at a high level. And I think a lot of Celtics fans overlook that. I think a lot of Celtics fans get a little too upset over losing, the finals last year and then the conference finals this year and the two conference finals before the finals last year as well. I just want to get that out of the way. I think I'm absolutely blessed as a basketball fan. The last 2 years especially, it's been incredible watching this Celtics squad, especially around Jalen and Jason. And this year, it just wasn't enough. But I think a part of it is on me for not really realizing in the first couple of rounds. Because let's be honest, with the Atlanta Hawks, no way that series should have gone 6 games.
Agreed.
And the way they lost a few of those games was borderline unacceptable for how good of a team you were. And, it's the playoffs at this point. Then with Philly, it looked like you might get eliminated in 6 against Philly. Obviously, miraculous comeback. Jason Tatum has the best Game 7 ever. We buy back in. Against the Miami Heat, go down 0-3. And, I find myself tweeting this isn't a championship team. And I think I was right then. Or at least this year's version of it. They weren't a championship team, but they're that talented that they get it back to a Game 7 in Boston and everyone buys back in. So partial blame on myself because I think the writing was on the wall. I think the signs were there this whole playoff run. And, if you want to chalk that up to Mazzulla being a first-year head coach and not nearly as ready as Ime Udoka seemed last year, I think that's a fair thing too. Now, for how the Game 7 actually went, I think it also goes into playing with your food in the first 2 series. I think maybe you're not in this situation where you're in a Game 7 and you have to leave everything out on the line because you went down 0-3 because you're gassed at this point. I mean, your starting center is 36 years old. By the time you got to this Game 7, Robert Williams was banged up and puking throughout the Game 7. I'm not saying elongated playing time is what made him sick, but he was injured and sick. By the way, none of these are excuses, just unfortunate things that happen in the team at this point. Brogdon, partial tear in his forearm. Jaylen Brown, hurt left hand going into Game 6. 9 turnovers for Jaylen Brown in Game 7, completely unacceptable. I think you could chalk a few of those up to that injured left hand. There was a few plays where he literally just lost the handle with his left turnover. And then Jason Tatum, just super, super shame. First play of the game, rolls his ankle real bad, and it just looked like he could not move out there. And there's people saying out there like, oh, like if he was actually a dog, like he would have left it. Like he didn't play a horrible game for having a rolled ankle, and he barely came out. I think that criticism of JT is unfair. It's just unfortunate more than anything else. And at the end of the day, they just did not show up in Game 7. I think the thing that hurt me the most was what did we hear all last year is they just needed more either off the bench or they needed more of a scoring presence. They needed more of a ball handler. In the NBA Finals when they lost to the Warriors, they go out, they get Malcolm Brogdon. He's great all year long. He's the sixth man of the year. Playoffs, kind of a ghost, man. Brogdon was kind of a ghost in the playoffs. You know, a few good moments in the Atlanta series. I can think of one good game in the Philly series and then was just awful in the Miami series. I almost would have felt better if we didn't play him in game 7. I don't think he played the second half, but when he came in game 7, he threw up an air ball. He had a few turnovers, missed layups. Like, realizing Brogdon wasn't the answer was also a hard pill to swallow. And now we're at the end, and we have a lot of questions to answer this summer. I'm still in the camp of let's sign JB. Let's get this Supermax. And let's keep the Jays together because I don't think any trade or any move will put us in a better position than if we have the Jays together. That's number one. Number two, Joe Mazzulla. I think he saved his coaching job by coming back from down 0-3. I think if he would have got swept, we're having a completely different conversation here. He was nails in elimination games in these playoffs. He won
what 5-1. 5-1.
Yeah, 5-1. He was 5-0 going into that game 7. Obviously, the game 7 in Philly, he's able to get his guys up from down 0-3 in the Heat series. Never got too high, never got too low. I even, I'm sure not everyone noticed this, but I even noticed he was getting better at the podium. He was getting better with the media. So I think he saved himself there. I think we're going to see Joe Mazzulla again next year. And then, the questions start. Grant Williams, I wouldn't be surprised if we let him walk, depending on how much money he wants. Is Al Horford a guy who comes off the bench next year? Do you need to get another big? So I do think there's going to be tweaks to the roster next season, but I'm staying true to, I believe Mazzulla is going to be the head coach, and I think it would be silly to split up the Jays still. I just don't understand that logic. I think both of them get tremendously better every year. I think Jalen needs to work on his handle. That's evident. And I think you just trust the Jays. Like the last 4 or 5 years, the Celtics have been better than 95% of the NBA. I don't think obviously you're not getting over that hump yet, but why not just keep going back and getting to that point? I think eventually it will happen with these two. I mean, these two are two of the best forwards in the entire NBA. They play both sides of the ball, and they have all the experience now. If you want to tweak everything around them, I'm fine with that. I think getting rid of Jalen and giving up at this point, especially the trade that keeps getting tossed around is for Dame Lillard. What has he done? Dame hasn't won anything. Yeah, he's an outstanding player, but what are you doing there? You're getting rid of so much defense and age, and you're bringing in a guy who can score obviously at a way better rate than Jaylen Brown. But like I said, Jaylen Brown gets better every year. Whether it's a Supermax or not, I think you got to keep the Jays together. It's sad. I think this is when fans start to turn on their teams, but that's how I see it. Horrible season. I'll be sad. I'm excited for the finals. And that's it for the Celtics this year.
I think that, I don't know if it's a horrible season. I think from your expectations, yes, maybe a horrible season. Mazzulla, the biggest thing of Mazzulla, I'm back with you around that. He definitely deserves another shot, and he definitely deserves a shot with a freaking actual bench. Like, they got so screwed by when the Ime news came down and when they decided to do all that. The man had imagine like just not having a full coaching staff for your entire first year, and also Stoudemire leaving in the middle of the year too, and having to deal with that, probably somewhere that he leaned on a lot. There, just crazy circumstances they had to deal with from day one, from before even camp started off this year. I don't know about what you think about this, Steve. I've wrestled with it back and forth. I don't know how you trade Jaylen Brown and try to sell it at this point. I mean, maybe there's a move you can make that maybe they're better off for it. But they're both so still not even in their prime. And I'm just always more partial to the idea of just keeping it together and trying to figure it out, because that's how you see sometimes like it continuity is so key in sports, and in basketball you barely see it. And this run from the Celtics, even though they haven't won a championship yet, has been so successful from other team standards. Yeah. Just all the Eastern Conference finals, even years they shouldn't have made the conference finals, making the conference finals. Like, the infrastructure is there. They have the star talent now. It's just about getting lucky one of these years. Like, it really, really is. Like, they're on the press. Game 7 again. Back-to-back years, you win and you lose a Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. A lot. If you told me that the Cavs next year that was going to happen, I would sign up for that every single day of the week. And that's what more or less is going to be the same next year. I don't think, even if you go into it looking next year, who are the favorites in the East going to be? It's going to be the Bucks. It's going to be the Celtics. That's who, and it should be. It absolutely should be. So it's tough. It's tough right now, but it's the Jimmy revenge. I don't know what else you like. He's a singular force, and that's what it comes down to more than anything.
I don't want to, be mean to Donnie here, but now that I'm no longer Stevie Boston fans are spoiled. Like, they are. Boston fans are spoiled. I think it's 4 times they've been in the Eastern Conference Finals in the Tatum Brown era. They've been to the NBA Finals. This is a good team. Boston fans are going to panic because they're not used to not winning championships. And you have the same year, the Celtics lose in the Eastern Conference Finals. You have the Bruins, that were the best team in the NHL, lose in the first round to the Panthers, who, guess what, are going to the Stanley Cup. They both lost to very, very good teams, very formidable opponents. I am strongly in the camp of do not trade Jaylen Brown. I have always been, I think I've told you, Donnie, I think this year, after your hype of Jaylen Brown, since we kind of met, I kind of fell in love with watching Jaylen Brown. I say this all the time. I don't think I've ever seen someone who is so good at every aspect of basketball except dribbling. And dribbling something you can figure out. Dribbling something you can work on. You can't really teach someone to make cold-blooded shots with guys in their face. You cannot teach Jaylen Brown's athleticism. He's in the 0.0001% of athletic players in the NBA. He's got A-plus athleticism. He's got, in my opinion, A shooting, probably A-plus shooting, maybe get a little more consistent with the 3. But Jaylen Brown, mid-range game is one of the best in the league. He has great explosiveness, and he's one of the best defenders for a guard, forward, hybrid, whatever you want to call him, in the NBA. The only thing Jaylen Brown doesn't have is he just can't really dribble, and then maybe make his playmaking a little better, but that will also come with the dribbling. I know he had a bad game. And it was under bad circumstances because, like you said, the first play where you see Tatum go down on his ankle, and then people giving Tatum shit. It's like, you clearly know he's not 100% if he's only taking 4 shots in the first half. Yeah. Like, how are you like, oh, Tatum's just shying away from
he was grimacing every
people like Tatum's shying away from the moment. He's not clutch. It's like, did you just forget Game 7? Against Philly? Did you forget Game 6 against Philly? Like, hey, Tatum can't step it. Like, what are we doing here? Like, the man got hurt on his ankle, and it's going to affect your jump shot if it's that bad. So then a lot of pressure was on Brown, and I think, too, like you said, he was dealing with a hand injury. And for someone who can't dribble to begin with, who now has to have a lot more volume going through him, a lot more usage rate, and now he's trying to dribble with a bad hand, it's going to get sloppy. The shot was just a cold shooting night for him. Yeah. And the turnovers, a few were because of the hand. A couple other ones, I think he was just trying to do too much. It just got sloppy. It was kind of a mess. But regardless, that's one game. And I know the playoffs are amplified, and a lot of the common fans only watch a couple of the playoff games each year and a couple of the series, and they don't watch the regular season. This guy, who's 2 over to my left here, watches every single Boston Celtics game. There will be the best Sunday night football game you can have on, and this guy will be texting me and Jake updates about the Celtics regular season game against the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, that's how it goes. That's just how it goes. So I get it, Duddy. I get it. Like, it's tough hearing all these opinions for people who have only watched such a small sample size of this team compared to you. And I am in the camp because I love watching the Celtics. I think one of the most well-oiled machines to watch in terms of basketball. I think they're great. They just had some really cold shooting nights, and maybe they got a little 2 3-pointer happy when they got down into Miami in multiple games in that series. But you can't break up this team. You've been one of the most successful teams in the NBA. You've been a top 5 team in the NBA since you've had this core, and they're entering their prime. Like I said, Jaylen Brown is A+ in pretty much everything except dribbling. I'll give him an F in dribbling, and I don't care because he's pretty much A+ in everything. He's also was all team this year. And you're talking about maybe don't bring this guy back, maybe try to trade him for someone who's 8 years older. Stop. Stop it. You have a good team. You just haven't gotten the breaks yet to win a championship. I'm ignoring him. So it's perfect. It's so perfect. Just stick with it. You've already figured out what so many teams can't figure out. You have a 1A and a 1B. You have a team that knows how to play together. You have a lot of good players around Jaylen Brown and Tatum. And I know some of them might get switched out this offseason. Things may look different. But you have the core, and your core has been winning consistently. You just haven't won the big one yet. This is a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals 4 times. This is a team that went to the NBA Finals last year and only just lost to, one of the greatest dynasties of our lifetime. It's going to be okay. I know people want to hit the panic button as soon as you lose in the playoff series. But with everything that went on, with the distractions at the beginning of this season, with the coaching change, with everything, just take a step back, give it a month, and just get ready for next year.
It also
Jaylen Brown's a superstar.
It also depends on him, though, and that's the biggest unknown is what he really wants.
True. That is what I was going to say too, and something that was encouraging because as a Boston fan, you were kind of skating on those thoughts the last year and a half of wow, this the media is telling us this, and he doesn't really say it one way or another. So does he agree? Does he actually want out? Something that was encouraging on 2 levels was after the game, he took almost all the responsibility for losing that game 7. He said, I failed the city. I got to be better, which one was just, if an athlete on your team has a bad game, that's almost one of the best things you can hear after. Obviously, you don't want to hear excuses, but, ownership and responsibility is a good thing. And Jaylen Brown showed that. He also insinuated in the presser that he was going to be back in Boston, and a very well-known, well-liked, well-received Boston sports figure or Boston media figure said claimed today that Jaylen Brown bought a 2-story condo in the Seaport area in Boston today. So everyone loves those rumors. It seems like Jaylen wants to be in. I know Brad Stevens. I can't see a world where he wants Jaylen out.
It's Wick too. Yeah, so it's Wick and Jaylen. Like if Jaylen wants to stay, great. Wick, you're gonna have to pay $600 million for the foreseeable future, and that's what it's gonna. That's a big number, and it's a big decision for Jaylen to want to walk away from that number if it's on the table. That's like the biggest thing. I don't care.
The last thing I want to say, because before I forget this, Steve brought it up. Dribbling, obviously something Brown needs to work on. It just so happens that it's great that that's one of the easier things to work on as a basketball player.
He should dribble all summer. Just walk around and dribble into basketball.
Anybody can learn how to dribble. You can't teach anybody to do the dunks or the athleticism Jaylen Brown has.
Not at all.
The best part too is this dude was lifting weights underwater all summer to get better at his game. Like I think he'll be able to handle a few ball dribbling drills. Like this is a guy who doesn't shy away from the extra work. I think we know what Jaylen will be doing this summer. And I'm excited to see him back in green next year because I think that's where he's going to be. Well, we'll see. I have a whole offseason to bug out about it. We have a whole NBA Finals coming up. It's going to be amazing. Feels good to be back with the trio, boys.
It was great. I know, like I said, I wish it was under different terms. I wish I had Happy Dunny for this pod.
Yeah.
But, hey, we got all 3 of us here.
Hey, there's still a big part of Happy Dunny here. We got the NBA Finals. Season isn't over yet. I'm just worried that we might have cursed the podcast if we all bet against the Heat and then Jimmy Butler just goes all Undertaker on us.
Don't tell Mir. You better not tell Meerkat.
It's too late.
Shout out
Meerkat, we all picked the Nuggets.
Yeah.
So
shout out Meerkat too.
He told me stay away from the Nuggets.
Oh.
He goes, I don't want you. He's like, stay away from them.
It's too late. Too late. We're all in.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for Happy Hour Hoops. For Steve, Jake, myself. RIP the Boston Celtics. Go Denver Nuggets. And we'll see you after game 1.
Peace.